Alright guys, welcome to this page of the notes. Again, we're working on the conic sections known as parabolas, and what we're doing is answering a whole bunch of questions about those parabolas. But first, I've given you this equation, which is in standard form. It doesn't quite look like it though. You'll have to do a little bit of work to get it in standard form, and here's what you should immediately recognize by looking at it. First thing you should recognize is that the y is to the first power. It is the x that is squared. So what you're going to want to do, right, since it's the x that's squared, I know that this is going to be a vertical. I don't know whether it opens up or down yet, but I know that it is going to be vertical since the x is squared. But I do need to solve this for y. So we'll move the 2x squared to the other side, subtract the 32 to the other side. Let's go ahead and write this in standard form. So in standard form, I would have y is equal. I subtract 2x squared to the other side, so that'd be a minus 2x squared. I already have negative 16x squared, so minus 16x, sorry, not squared, just a minus 16x. And then I'm going to subtract 32, so it would be a minus 32 minus 1, which would be a minus 33, minus 33. So there we go. Now it's in standard form. It is solved for y. The y is to the first power. It is the x that is squared. And this tells me several things. First, I know that it is vertical. So we'll be working in that first column on the formula sheet for vertical parabolas, where it is y equals x that is squared. And the second thing I know right away just by looking at it, the value of a is negative. So I know that this one is going to open down. But in order to answer the rest of the questions, I need to know the value of a, h, and k. That's going to require me to complete the square. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. Here we go. We'll do it right down here. Complete the square. Remember, I have y is equal to minus 2x squared minus 16x minus 33. We need to create a space where we can do our work. So we'll go ahead and make a little workshop using parentheses. We'll put everything we want in the workshop inside the parentheses and what we don't want outside. But before I complete the square, I have a little bit of prep work to do. That leading coefficient has to be a 1. I got a negative 2 there. That's no bueno, so pull it out. That's going to leave me with an x squared, but I can't just pull a negative 2 out of that one without pulling a negative 2 out of this one. So I have a negative 16 divided by a negative 2. That leaves you with a plus 8. It's worth mentioning at this point, I pulled out a negative 2. So when I complete the square in here and subtract that same value outside, I'm going to need to put that negative 2 back. Here we go. Y equals minus 2 x squared plus 8x plus b squared over 4. And so that the algebra, right, so I don't break any rules in algebra, I will subtract b squared over 4, but put back that negative 2 that I had pulled out. I think you guys can probably do this in your head. My b is now an 8. Sorry, my snowman's not connected. Hold up. There we go. My b is an 8. So 8 squared is going to be 64. 64 divided by 4 is 16. So plus 16. And then on the outside, minus 33. And then it would be minus, oh, sorry, here, that's my b squared over 4. Let me do it in green for you. Plus 16. On the outside, I will subtract 16 and multiply it by a negative 2. And again, just to show you that the algebra is satisfied here, I would multiply this negative 2 by 16, which would give me a negative 32. Then a negative and a negative would be a positive 32, negative 32, positive 32. Cancel each other out, and I would get right back to what I started with. So the algebra is happy. All right, algebra is all good. We're all squared up. Check's taken care of. This, right, completing the square. We call it completing the square because this is now a perfect square trinomial. It'll factor into two binomials that are identical. So I'm just going to skip it. You know it's going to be an x plus 4 times x plus 4, just write it as an x plus 4 squared. So y is equal to negative 2x plus 4. Why? Plus 4 times plus 4 is a positive 16. Plus 4 is a positive 8. I need 2 of them though, so I'll just write it as a square, and then I'll have minus 33 plus 32, and so y is equal to negative 2x plus 4 squared minus 1. Okay, this is my vertex form where I now know A, H, and K. A is equal to a negative 2. H, don't forget to take the opposite. Since it's a plus 4, my value needs to be a minus 4. Minus 4, and K is a negative 1. Now that I know A, H, and K, let's just jump back up there. This is the tricky part, right? Completing the square, that's the hard part. Now that I know A, H, and K, just plug and chug into the formula sheet. Don't fat finger something on your calculator, and you shouldn't have any trouble at all. Here we go. Let me rewrite my value of A, H, and K right up here so that we have it for quick, easy access. A was negative 2, H negative 4, and K was a negative 1. And here we go. Remember, my vertex is at HK, which means that mine is negative 4, negative 1. Negative 4, negative 1. Again, that's just plugging and chugging. The axis of symmetry was at x equals h. X equals h. Well, my h is a minus 4, so I'll be at x equals minus 4. There's my axis of symmetry. My focus is at h, comma k plus 1 over 4a. And then my directrix is y equals k minus 1 over 4a. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of work there. K plus 1 over 4a, k minus 1 over 4a. So let's go ahead and do that work. Let me do that work right down over here. So here's what I've got. I've got k plus 1 over 4a. My k was a minus 1 plus 1 over 4 times a negative 2. So I get negative 1. The negative comes out minus 1 over 8. Again, feel free to use your calculator if you need to. It comes out to be negative 9/8. Again, if you were to graph this, you'd want a decimal. So my calculator tells me negative 1.125. If I do k minus 1 over 4a minus 1 minus 1/8, again, go ahead and put that using a calculator, minus 7/8, which is, according to my calculator, negative 0.875. So anyway, that's as a decimal. That's if it's a fraction. Generally, on my test, if you're taking this class with me, if this were a multiple choice question and I were asking you for the focus or the directrix, I probably would leave it in fraction form. I just prefer fractions. I think they look nicer. But if I were asking you to graph it, absolutely, I'm going to graph a decimal over a fraction. Much, much easier. So anyway, here we go. Let's write these guys down for our particular problem. So for me, my focus is at negative 4, and then that decimal was negative 9/8, or a decimal, sorry, that fraction was minus 9/8. So there's my directrix, or my focus. My directrix was y equals k minus 1 over 4a, which again, as a fraction, was just minus 7/8. And then the length of the lattice rectum, remember the lattice rectum is the absolute value of 1 over a, which for us is going to turn out to be, remember my a is a negative 2. So I wind up with negative 1/2, but I take the absolute value, I still get positive 1/2. That's why we take the absolute value 1/2. All right, guys, hopefully these are starting to make a lot more sense. Again, I know that completing the square is the tricky part. So I'm going to do a couple more example problems with you just so that we get more experience with completing the square. But at this point, right, this is plug and chug. Once you know A, H, and K, you just use that formula sheet to answer all of the questions. I will do a couple more example problems with you, not so that we can really see this again, but just to get more practice completing the square. So head on over to the next page of the notes. We'll take a look at another problem. I'll meet you guys there.